Hello everybody, my name is Franklin Lorenzo, and in today's video I'm going to take you up a hike on Volcano Acatenango located in Guatemala. If you're like me, by now you have probably watched a whole bunch of YouTube videos trying to gather as much information as possible to go on your Acatenango and Fuego volcano journey. All of the information I'm going to share on this video will be based on the beginning of October of 2024 and my personal experiences. Guatemala is a country located in Central America, and it is famous for hosting a variety of world sites. One of them, or two actually, would be the volcano called Acatenango and the one called Fuego. It is my understanding that the government of Guatemala mandates that every person attempting to climb Acatenango and Fuego must do so with a guide. The good thing is that when it comes to guides, you have options. You can choose to join an open group, which will make it more affordable, or you can have your own private guide, which obviously is more expensive. I decided, along with my 3 other friends, that we wanted to do a private tour for a number of reasons. The number one is that we control when and for how long, and the pace at which we went up. The second is that traveling with a smaller group of people, it is easier to move and you have less delays. When it comes to where to stay before your hike, I highly recommend you stay in the city called Antigua. It is beautiful, it has a whole bunch of restaurants, so you can eat all kinds of foods, all types of drinks, plenty of sites, cultural sites, museums, you name it. Antigua is beautiful and is one of the reasons most people go to Guatemala. And the reason you want to stay in Antigua is because from there to the initial site of the hike is only 20-30 minutes by car. Whereas if you choose to do so from Guatemala City, it's gonna be a longer drive, between 1 and 1.5 without traffic. And I did my homework and I lived it by being there. The traffic in Guatemala City in the morning, it is one of the worst I have seen. So if you're planning to do so directly from Guatemala City, I highly suggest that you leave the city before 6 in the morning. 5 would be even better. And then you can just kill time somewhere else. Personally, I wanted to see Antigua, I wanted to experience it, and I'm glad that I did. But the benefit was that also hotels in Antigua were pretty affordable. And so we chose to book for 2 nights, even though we only were going to use it for 1 night. And that's so that we could leave our bags stored in the room. I'm pretty sure there's probably some sort of company or service that they can watch your bags, but I didn't look into that because I also knew that after the hike I would want to take a shower, and because we booked a private tour, we made sure that we got to our hotel before checkout time. Now let's talk about gear and what to bring in your personal backpack. And for that, I will reference my phone because it is a rather semi-long list. For this, really try your best to not cut corners. You really want to invest in a good pair of hiking boots. I saw plenty of people who chose to go with their running sneakers, and consequently saw a lot of people falling, slipping, and whatnot. You also want waterproof socks in case it rains, powder to keep your feet dry, baby wipes, water, not only for yourself, but they will also ask you to bring 2 liters of water that will be used at the base camp so that they can prepare foods and drinks for you. Toilet paper is a must. If they tell you, listen to them. What we did is that in the hotel, we grabbed a whole bunch and rolled it into our hands, and then we put it into a Ziploc and then went into the bag. And trust me, you will need it. When it comes to clothing, you want to do layers. What I did was I wore a tank top, then a long sleeve, then I had a light jacket, then an actual coat, a scarf, and on top of that, I had a poncho. And yes, I used all of them. You want gloves, you want glasses, specifically visors that have a seal around the edges so that way dust doesn't get into your eyes. You will also need a very good power bank, and I'm glad I brought one because I definitely use it to charge up my electronic devices. I also recommend a rain poncho. I brought one and everything, but thankfully it didn't rain on us, so I didn't use it for that, but then I ended up using it for somewhere else, and I'm so glad that I brought it. Now, 2 things that I definitely think you should bring and not skip whatsoever will be a flashlight, preferably one that you can clip on somewhere, whether it's your bag or your hat or, I don't know, some way, shape, or form, so that way you free up your hands. So the moment that you have to go through difficult parts of the hike, you use both of your hands for a more secure and safe either ascent or descent. And one thing that we brought, and I'm glad that we brought, was hand warmers. These became so useful, but I will expand on that later on in the video. When it comes to photographic gear, I highly recommend that you bring stuff that are light, because trust me, the weight will matter on the way up and on the way down. Either way, I chose to bring the Insta360 X4, the DJI Pocket 3, the Canon R5, along with the RF 28-70 f2 and the 70-200 f2.8, plus a tripod. If you want to get close and tight shots of the volcano, the bare minimum would be a 200. If you can get something longer that can still handle low light well, bring that. And obviously the tripod, because you're going to have to drag the shutter to capture some of the eruptions. Okay, so we have officially stopped at the very first rest stop. They give you usually 5 minutes, but if you require more, they can give you a max of 10, because they have to keep a pace for you to go all the way to the top so that you make it on time. So far, I wouldn't say it's challenging yet. It's definitely taxiing, more so because my bag is 25 pounds right now. And then that's not including this camera, which is about 5 to 6 pounds with the harness. So yeah, I'm hauling about 31, 32 pounds. And that is something that you feel. And then on top of that, your chest doesn't fully expand because of the harness, so you're also working against that. So keep that in mind. While I gave you a list of what to bring with you for your own personal use, I also recommend another list just for your own well-being. And that would include some snacks, electrolytes, and enough water for your own personal use, not water that will be used for cooking. And one thing that you can get so that you can bring the most amount of water without having to carry it on your hands will be a camel pack. So look into that, and in that bag you can put your vitamins, your electrolytes, and it will be a lot easier for you to go through the hike by just having to grab a hose and drinking your water. So we have officially made it to the halfway point. Here's where we're determining whether we're gonna have lunch or if we're gonna continue to the base camp. We're choosing just to have a few snacks for about 15 minutes and then continuing on, which from here to the top at the pace that we're going, it's gonna be roughly 2 more hours. So the hike is definitely not the most challenging one I've done, but I think the key is definitely your pacing. And right now our guide is setting the pace. So obviously, if you're watching this and you're not a photographer and you're not bringing all this gear, it will be even easier. But just a friendly reminder that there are porters here that you can hire to carry stuff for you, with one key component is that depending on how heavy it is, they'll tell you how much they'll charge you. I'm happy to announce that we got the worst part out of the way, and we were given the choice of having our lunch at the last rest stop before making it to the base camp or to continue. But at this point, all of us are pretty hungry. So we are gonna choose to eat here. And then from here, it's like another 40 more minutes to the base camp. I can tell you right now, you kind of get mixed feelings of cold and hot. And you get like these weird flashes. My shirts, I have a tank top and this, they're completely drenched, but I got all the change of clothes back here, which I most likely will use just to sleep, and then tomorrow I will put this back on, and then when I get to the hotel, take a shower and get it done. Right now we are at the 3 hour and 17 minute mark since we started the hike, and about 5 minutes ago is when I started feeling the altitude. So slightly more out of breath and slightly lightheaded. So I'm focusing on working on my breathing and slowing down the pace. But the view up here, as you can see, is beautiful. We also took a slight short break that was not scheduled, but definitely needed. When they tell you to bring layers and to bring changes of clothes, do so. But once again, worth mentioning that you can rent layers like beanies, scarves, jackets, coats, pants, gloves when you make it to the top or to the campsite. So if you don't really want to carry all that weight, You can do it up there, but you might be uncomfortable on the way there. When it comes to hiring a porter to bring your bag or bags, I did explain that yes, the lighter it is, the less they charge, and the more heavy it is, the more they charge. But one thing that they did not disclose that we learned the hard way, because one of my friends ended up hiring one of them to carry his backpack, is that the fee is on the way up only. On the way down, obviously, they're gonna charge you again, but hopefully by then you have drank most, if not all, of your water, snacks, and food. Okay, so we finally made it to the base camp. Definitely not as challenging as coming up for the majority of the trip. It was clear initially, now we're getting through some fog. But definitely it's very beautiful here. And now we can't wait to see what our lodging is gonna be like, which you know is gonna be tight. And obviously not luxurious, but definitely luxury compared to camping exposed to the elements or with a tent. I am out of breath on this one, but we made it. We made it to our campsite. ¿Cuál es?
Good job, man.
Gracias. Gracias.
Oh.
So this is from 2 and 2. Actually, that's not bad. You can see it's really nice.
Oh, nice. I thought we were gonna sleep on the floor.
No.
Nice.
No. So this is how we're camping for the night. Actually, it's pretty cool. But I'll report more later. Let me catch my breath. Other than the reasons I gave you, another reason we chose to go with the private tour is because it included all of the ground transportation. It also included all of the foods and beverages that we consumed at the base camp. And it also had the cabin where we stayed with the cots and sleeping bags. After finally making it to Acatenango's base camp, which took us 4 hours and 28 minutes, we were given an hour and a half to rest, and then our guide prepared us a delicious vegetable soup, which gave us the energy to tackle the next thing, which was Volcán de Fuego. We are now going to attempt to see the fire volcano, which is again a 4-hour round trip, and we might see it, we might not, so stay tuned for that update. This is what the hike is like on the way to the fire volcano. Very steep, very uneven, slippery. So it makes sense why going down is gonna be 45 minutes. Going up is gonna be 45. We're gonna spend about 45 minutes there if we can tolerate the cold. And then on the way back, it's gonna be 45 minutes down, but an hour and 20 on the way up. And this makes sense why. Super steep, very slippery. And there are some cliffs that if you fall, you're becoming a hashtag. We made it to the halfway point of the fire volcano and we are exhausted. So now it's mental over physical, whereas the beginning was more physical for me. So now it's just pushing past your threshold and your comfort zone, right? You won't see a lot of footage on the way to Fuego because by that point we were pretty tired. And then on top of that, it was so steep going down on the initial descent that I didn't feel it was safe for me to be recording. I gotta tell you, on the way up to Volcán de Fuego, that's when I felt tiredness and exhaustion kicking in. That's when the lack of oxygen was very present or not present in my body. I gotta tell you, it was a challenge on the way to the top of Volcán de Fuego. But with that being said, oh my goodness, what an incredible experience. I finally understand why so many people who have gone, they attested how worth it was. And just being there after so many hours of hiking and being tired and hungry and sleep deprived, and in many cases, some people will be jet lagged, just watching that volcano up close. You could feel the ground beneath you just trembling, and you would hear the big boom when it would erupt, and seeing all the ash. It was truly something memorable and magical at the same time. Now, being up there was definitely cold. I'm from New York City, And so I know cold. I wouldn't say over there was colder, but given that most of the country is not that cold, you will feel it. So you definitely need to listen to me when I say bring layers. At the top, where we could see the volcano, where we couldn't go any further, I had the tank top, the long sleeve, the blue light jacket, the coat, my scarf, a beanie, a poncho. And with that, I was feeling okay, but my hands were freezing because I like my hands to be free so that I can operate cameras. And so also at the same time, the sun was going down. So by the time the sun completely set, we were pretty cold. And so with that also came not being able to take photos or videos because it was too dark. And so we started our way back to Acatenango's base camp. When we finally reached our base camp for the night, thankfully they cooked us a really nice meal with this delicious chicken and vegetables, and they gave us hot cocoa, and that was so incredibly well received. Then we moved on into going into the cabin, removing anything that was sweaty, jumping into the sleeping bags, and try to sleep. I did notice for myself, not my friend, that in the first 20 minutes, I couldn't really fall asleep because I felt this weirdness about breathing. And again, it was the lack of oxygen. But ultimately, I was so tired that eventually I fell asleep. And I gotta tell you, that cabin got cold. Even though I was inside a sleeping bag and I had my pants on and I had a pair of clean socks and I had my layers still on minus the coat, I was still pretty decently cold, especially whenever I moved even an inch inside the sleeping bag. But if you somehow stay still, you're gonna be pretty comfortable. But the one thing that helped us the most were the hand warmers. We each got 2 pairs. Some went into our hands and some I put at the bottom of the sleeping bag so we warm up my feet. And that was truly something that I have to recommend it. You gotta do it and you won't regret it. That leads me into a big bang that we heard around 2 in the morning. And so it was a little bit scary and, concerning because we just heard it, but we sort of peeked through the window and it was the biggest eruption that I saw while I was there. And so obviously I took it all in. I appreciated it. It was amazing. I didn't even bother to photograph it because by the time I would have pulled the camera out and put it on a tripod, it would have been gone. But it was great that I got to enjoy it on my own and that we woke up and actually saw what it was, and wow, it was an incredible sight to behold. Despite being completely exhausted, even though I wanted to sleep, I woke up around 4, unable to sleep any further. And so I was comfortable and warm-ish in my sleeping bag inside the cabin, looking at the ceiling, contemplating what to do. And ultimately I just got dressed, didn't even bother with waking up my friend Anthony, and just grabbed my camera, grabbed the 70-200, and I grabbed the tripod and I went out and photographed the volcano for the next 2 hours. Being exposed to the elements at 4 in the morning on top of a volcano, overlooking another volcano with a lot of wind and no sun to warm us up and no actual fire. Wow, I'm really glad that I brought the gear that I brought, because with the beanie and everything else that I mentioned previously, I was actually pretty comfortable. Now the key is that you want to drag your shutter when you capture the photos of the volcano. I was mostly ranging between 1/5 of a second up to 3.2 seconds. The average was 2 seconds. I was cranking up the ISO and I did keep my aperture at its lowest, which was 2.8. I know that for a lot of people that will be counterproductive as things could come out of focus, but thankfully I knew what I was doing. I was able to use the magnifying glass on the camera so I can punch into where the lava was. And then I did an actual manual focus, because you don't want the camera on automatic focus because it's going to be hunting back and forth and you don't want that. So focus the camera manually and then turn off your autofocusing feature. And then from there on, just becomes a game of patience, because Mother Nature is very unpredictable. Some were a lot of smoke, some were barely any lava, and some were a lot of lava. And so that's why I chose to do it for 2 hours until I got a shot that I wanted. And there is a shot, and it's this one. Out of the many shots that I've taken there, this one is the one that speaks to me the most. Such a beautiful shot, so dramatic. You get to appreciate the lava and the smoke and the blue sky. But obviously, I took many photos in the middle of the dark and as the sun was coming up and after the sun came up. And I am truly, truly happy that I went and got to experience that, because that was my birthday gift to myself.
All right, people, it's a wrap.
We got up at 4 something in the morning. We photographed the volcanoes you can see right behind me. Got some really nice photos, but I can't tell how great they are until I pull them in my computer. And we're gonna start heading down. It's gonna take about 3 hours. So let's get going. 3 hours. 6 in the morning became our call time to start our descent down from Acatenango. And so we were told on average it would take anywhere between 3 and 4 hours to make it on the way down. But our guy said if you do a light jog on the way down, we could make it in less. And in fact, we did. And so for the first 20 minutes, we were not really running much because it was more flat. But then the moment that it started going down, we were running pretty much most of the way. And even though I was experiencing a little bit of pain on my left knee, I was still able to power through. And we made it down in 1 hour and 28 minutes. And that put us back into the very first place where we started, which is this small restaurant. And we had the best and most delicious and fulfilling breakfast of our lives. From there, we took a couple of pictures with the group. We got back in the car and we were taken back to Antigua, where we were able to take a shower, gather our belongings, and head to the next destination, which I will make a video about our itinerary in Guatemala. And so stay tuned for that. And like always, if you enjoyed this video and you found it helpful, please consider liking and subscribing. And until the next video, take care.